true gain of every country is ample wages to the laborer. The laboring classes are the nation. They are the producers, and they are, moreover, the greatest consumers. Their expenditures make the great home market. John Barnard Byles. When considered, the tenets of free trade are fallacies, contrived for the benefit of the few, to the detriment of the many. Free trade is simply an attack on labor. In 1849, a British barrister and judge published a book entitled Sophisms of Free Trade and Popular Political Economy Examined. In the book, Byles examined 35 sophisms that free trade used to deceive people into believing that free trade was beneficial to them. A sophism is a false argument, and these sophisms or fallacies still exist, and what Byles wrote over 160 years ago is still relevant today. Let's examine these sophisms. Sophism number 1. Political economy is a science. Byles explained that political economy, which is known today as economics, was not a collection of known truths on which well-informed men agreed, but in reality was sheer literature, unsatisfactory, obscure, presumptuous, and which would be dangerous were it not eminently tedious. According to Byles, the only hope for political economy was that it would one day become a science. Sophism number 2. Legislate on sound principles. Byles said that this sophism meant surrender yourself to the spirit of the system, which inferred that legislation should conform to the system which was already in place, instead of complying with reality. Byles described the spirit of the system as a fertile soil of error and a foe to solid knowledge. The spirit of the system implied that the existing system of free trade was correct and shouldn't be disputed, while the mind should be contracted to the present situation and no new concepts considered. To Byles, this was heresy. Sophism number 3. Let things alone. Laissez-faire. The idea that things are good by nature and spoiled by art was a common fallacy. Byles said that everything could be improved by culture. Without culture, every man was a savage, and man needed laws and regulations to prevent society from relapsing into barbarism. With the let-alone system of free trade, there would be no fair and equitable distribution of any increase of wealth. In fact, the opposite was the case, and history had shown the benefits of industry guided by the foresight and power of wise governments. Laissez-faire basically said, remain as you are. Sophism number 4. Foreign commodities are always paid for by British commodities. Therefore, the purchase of foreign commodities encourages British industry as much as the purchase of British commodities. The first part of the fallacy was buying foreign products benefits a country as much as buying domestic products. Byles explained that the first part of the sophism had already proven itself false, but even had it been true, the second part of the premise didn't follow. Byles quoted Adam Smith's own words, saying that home trade was more beneficial than foreign trade. In The Wealth of Nations, Adam Smith had said, a capital, therefore, employed in the home trade will sometimes make 12 operations, or be sent out and returned 12 times, before a capital employed in the foreign trade of consumption has made one. If the capitals are equal, therefore, the one will give 4 and 20 times more encouragement and support to the industry of the country than the other. And Byles pointed out that the gross value of an article produced in a nation denotes the wealth creation of that nation, and allows the nation to spend the gross value created, while it also created a home market equivalent to the wealth created. But imports cut both the wealth creation and the market itself in half. Sophism number 5, buying the cheapest market. This sophism leaves out the requirement that everyone in the home market has to be as fully and profitably employed in producing the means of purchase as he was before. But if the home market isn't fully employed, then the case is changed, because foreign buying would not benefit the community as a whole due to the loss of capital. Capital spent within a community reproduces itself. New manufacturing creates new income for the whole community, whereas imports tend to impoverish people due to lack of income. When capital is spent within a community, two capitals or values are created. The first is the capital spent or consumed in production, and is the spendable income of the nation, which pays wages, rent, and profits while creating a new market with the money it creates. This new market is the second capital, which stems from the creation of the wealth from the first market. This internal trade gives the community the benefit of spending two consumable capitals instead of one. When markets are close at hand, these two capitals may be turned over many times in a year, creating wealth for the community. Create one market and you create others, and stimulate and nourish production in an infinite series. But when foreign goods are introduced into the equation, then the nation loses both the capitals that otherwise would have been spent, and it moreover loses both the markets, or rather both the series of markets, which those two consumable capitals as spent would have created. Thus, buying in the cheapest market may benefit the immediate desire of the individual, but be destructive to the community as a whole. Sophism number 6. If all countries practice free trade, all countries would be gainers. Byles pointed out that any reflection on this sophism revealed its folly. The number of countries which enjoy peculiar facilities for the production of particular commodities are few, and most countries are adapted for the production even of the necessaries and comforts of life, of food, clothing, and lodging. Byles pointed out that a very large portion of the countries of the world enjoy moderate facilities for the production of everything necessary for the sustenance of their populations, and that a judicious protection system would allow each country to concentrate their industries on their own soil, which would generate flourishing industry and increased wealth and commerce throughout the world. But without protectionism's regulations, population, industry, and wealth had a tendency to concentrate and confine themselves to certain spots while decaying over the rest of the world. Wisely regulated protectionism would diffuse industry throughout the countries of the world for the benefit of all. With protectionism, each country's industry would help the industries of the other countries, while providing their own home country with a double production of wealth and home markets which result from internal trade. Byles said that with wise protectionism, everybody's industry, instead of superseding, furthers and helps the industry of everybody else. Each country thus gains that double set of producers, that double production of wealth, that double set of home markets, which, as we have seen, are everywhere ensured by the reduplicative operation of the home trade. In order to protect from existing monopoly, all manufacturing must be protected in their infancy to the point where there is equal and just competition. But even existing manufacture in old states require protection at times to prevent their extinction. Byles pointed out that the true gain of every country is ample wages to the laborer. The laboring classes are the nation. They are the producers, and they are moreover the greatest consumers. Their expenditure makes the great home market. But with free trade, the wages of labor were beaten down to the level of slave labor. Free exchange within a country could be beneficial to the community, but that same trade between countries endangers the security and certainty of the home market and the wages of the laborer. Protectionism would not destroy international trade, but make such trade more beneficial and equitable to the world's population. So in this section, consisting of Byles' first 6 sophisms of free trade, Byles explained that economics is not a science, and is in fact more of a fantasy, which consists of a system that conforms to the rules already in place, instead of seeking to understand reality. In sophism number 3, Byles explained that all things were to be cultivated for the benefit of the population of the earth. Leaving things alone led to the inequitable distribution of wealth. Byles also explained that trade within the confines of a community benefited the people by creating more trade, whereas imports cut capital creation by half. Then Byles asserted that buying in the cheapest market was not always the most beneficial for the entire community, and could be the most expensive choice over time. Byles also pointed out that even if all countries practiced free trade, that it would not be beneficial to the people of a country because the wages of labor were the true gain of every country, and free trade drove those wages down. This section covered free trade's attack on labor and explained that laissez-faire simply benefited the few at the expense of the many. Byles explained that economics was not a science and that legislation should conform to reality instead of economic literature pushed in the spirit of the system of free trade. There is no fairness or justice in the free trade system. Byles explained that even Adam Smith had said that trade within a nation was more beneficial to that nation than foreign trade was. Byles also explained that before foreign goods were to be allowed into a country, that everyone in the home market should be fully employed, so as to have the capacity to afford all of the products in the home market. Having an abundance of commodities with the consumer unable to pay for them was useless. Byles pointed out that the laborer was the backbone of the country, and that the true gain of every nation was ample wages to the laborer. But there were more sophisms that free traders pushed onto the public. The next video discusses things like the health of protected manufacturers, government involvement in economic activity, and taxes. Thank you for watching. Below the screen, there's an area where you can give us a thumbs up. Also, there's an area where you can share this video with others.